Morning everybody, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. This morning I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs Warhammer 40K, Episode 40, Mortal Pinnacle Part 4, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reaction to the other episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top right here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, in Mortal Pinnacle Part 3, Shadrach, of course, has escaped, and the Cadian shock troopers, along with the Krieger 1313, Jackner, Julian, Gregor, Emiliana, and Vetnex, or Sergeant Vex, or is it Vex or Vet? Vet, yes, are investigating the whereabouts of Commissar Shadrach, and now they have also had information about Inquisitor Tarweiler's plans of exterminating the entire planet of Axum. So they are in a rush to find Shadrach to prevent this catastrophe from occurring. Ayla Sakura is still looking for Quinlan Voss and Coda and some other Jedi. However, as you well know, Quinlan Voss and Coda are being devoured by Jakar. So I don't think she's really going to find anything left of them, maybe just bones. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in that storyline. And Ahsoka Tano has been helping out Nerva and Farnes. Farnes tried to attack Ahsoka once he found out that it was actually her that helped them out in escaping from the night. And yeah, luckily Ahsoka Tano was able to incapacitate him, and she's going to take them back to the to the Jedi, mainly Master Windu. So yeah, she saved Nerva and Farnes, and yeah, good luck to her trying to convince Master Windu and everybody else that they need to talk to the Imperium of Man forces. They need to have a basic understanding about what is this all about, why are we all fighting, and is there a way to find peace. And Ahsoka Tano, like I said in the previous part 3 of Mortal Pinnacle, she's alone in this endeavor. I don't think there's anyone else that is doing it like her, where she's trying to find a solution to this entire conflict that won't result in one faction winning over the other. So she's alone in this battle, and hopefully she will be able to convince those who are, entrenched in their positions. Yeah. But yeah, that was it with part 3, and now we are continuing on with part 4. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, go.
How did all this happen? This is way more than the other simulations gave us for the holding maneuver.
Hey Omega, what's up?
The young clone said as she stood within the holographic sphere, her large fleet and all of its information splayed out before and around her. 2 of the 3 mandators are completely totaled. And the holding fleet, it's more like a holding squad now, she added. Reports are still coming in. I'm sorting through them as quickly as I can, but yeah, it looks like a lot happened in those 20 minutes, said Arkanian, a clone named after the odd method of his production.
Arkanian? Okay. New character? Okay.
He and his brothers had arrived only a week or 2 before Omega had begun her specialized preparations for this very battle. They were looked down upon, and though she hated to admit it, she almost agreed with the natural resentment that the original clones projected towards the Sparties.
Why? Why would you do that, Omega? Did you forget that you are also kind of out of place when it comes to the clones? Why would you side with this notion that, you know, these clones are, you know, not really to the norm, if I can say that? You know, why would you be against that? Why would you support that notion?
As they were at times known. They were only about a year old, and each of them, Arkanian included, were fully grown. And it wasn't just that. The new clones that had suddenly arrived for advanced training were like bad clone stereotypes, and the Kaminoans could barely stand the sight of them. They all had the same memories, and they all seemed almost like flesh droids rather than proper clones, performing their duties in a belligerent fog that made them prone to aggressively acting out. Well, almost all. Arkanian was the single exception, a mutant not unlike Omega. He did not need any alterations or additions to fit into his station thanks to his adult size, but unlike the others, an abnormality in his brain had caused him to receive only the most basic aspects of his flash-pumped auto-training. The results were a perceptive and intelligent, if untrained clone who barely knew how to fire a blaster, but quickly absorbed concepts of strategy and statistics.
So his analytical mind is far more prominent in this clone, Arkanian, than his physical attributes or his, combat, hand-to-hand combat, or firing range type of clone, like all the other clones. Okay. So he's suited mainly for strategic purposes and not for physical conflict, if I can say that. Okay.
He was also highly aggressive, acting as the fuel to their team's fire more often than not. "Ark, are these right?" Sprout asked, the clone child nestled into an alcove over Omega's right shoulder.
Sprout. Okay.
8% is all they made it out with? After we allocated 2 whole mandators? The clone asked incredulously, the more matured clone nodding from his station across from Sprout nearer to the floor. "Yeah, and that's not all," said the clone named Ally, whose control station was situated above Omega's left shoulder. "These readings are unmistakable. Some kind of massive explosion or weapons discharge did this." The young strategist gasped.
The death of defiance.
Omega snapped her fingers. "Right, if this is all from some weapon, then our next step is to find it. Meek, get on those energy readings. Ally, sort through the comm traffic for ideas as to what is happening. Arkanian, send out battle report requests and collate what I can use. Then send it directly into my displays. Sprout, I want you sending me every technical analysis you can, no matter what it is. If it goes through your head, I want to know about it," she said, stretching, cracking her fingers, and extending out her hands, the globe of info spinning around her, altering as she initiated its direct command mode.
You know, it's such a shame that the Oracle team doesn't know that this is not a game, this is not a simulation, this is real. But you know what, yes, maybe it's for the best that they don't know that so many people have died, that this is actually real. And, you know, maybe playing it as a game, it gives them that focus that they would not necessarily have if they knew that they were, commanding real people and their lives are on the line as well. Yeah.
With that final initiation, she opened her eyes onto a scene of stellar war. Becoming the ephemeral will behind her fleet, the omnipresent spirit of their fight, their invisible goddess, each ship dancing at the flick of her wrists. And flick she did, sweeping her arms out, the wide wings of her armada splaying out and then in, beginning to surround the Imperial fleet. But the Imperials were not a static foe, reacting like multiple hives of enraged insects. new swarms of strike craft spilling into metallic clouds from the hangars of their cathedral homes. Omega could feel them, the new biting torrents of smaller ships, stinging with a disturbing effectiveness into the outermost forces of her fleet, which she directed to engage and intercept them. The impish clone smiled as she released swarms of her own, enough to match and ultimately even outnumber those put out by the Imperial vessels, the bulk of the two waves meeting between their forces, before the battle line was dragged up close to her. Right away, Omega could see why, watching as the enormous engines of the many enemy vessels roared to life, a sizable portion of them launching themselves with growing speed toward the heart of her own formation. More information poured in through her interfaces, revealing purple and green splashes of color, like fluorescent fogs and slim trailing nebulas lingering over the places where the fighting had been thickest. At first, it all seemed meaninglessly intermingled, but then she saw a trail leading away, and saw by the streams which composed it and the damaged vessel which it all led to, that this had been the vessel which had borne the insane weapon they had fired before. More information, communiques and vid feeds of the discharge, and
well, you don't have to worry about the death of Defiance. Its fangs have been pulled out. Yeah, its fangs have been pulled out, and it's no longer as threatening as it was before. But it did its job. You know, it took out those mandators, and yeah, I think that's the most important thing. All these other ships, they can be dealt with by the rest of the fleet, Admiral Rollah's fleet. But yeah, it was an extremely effective ship. It's just such a shame that it's been taken out from this battle. It's still operational, the vessel is still operational, but its main gun has been taken out.
Reports of the heroic actions which had been taken to neutralize it. Omega absorbed it all quickly and dismissed the weapon from her mind. Crippled and running, it was no longer a primary threat and could not match what now demanded her attention: the Imperial countercharge and division of forces. The last thing she did before fully focusing on the adversaries before her was to confirm safety for their planetary support strike force, sending the signal with a twitch of her fingers and ensuring that the planet of Axum would soon host a great deal more Republic forces. Sprout's tactical know-how filtered in as suggestions and remarks, his mind second only to Omega's own. Countercharge? Seems insane, was his first message, which was quickly followed by a second. Forcing a pincer? Was the next. Omega's eyes swept over the field, and she nodded to herself, agreeing more and more with his assessment as she watched the ragged Imperial line taking two distinct actions in opposite directions. They wanted to break through her line, get behind them, and then hold them down while their other ships distanced themselves and lined up shots to ensure damage from both sides. A bold plan, and one which depended entirely on their first charging fleet successfully holding and engaging their attention. A plan she intended to deny. She opened her hands, flicking her fingers as screens and options appeared. "I'm charging us straight through," she sent to Sprout and the others.
What? Against those cruisers and battleships, you're charging directly straight forward? Are you mad? Okay. Good luck.
"Do it. I see the goal. It is right before us." Sent Arkanian. "High losses guaranteed. Are you sure about this?" Sent Ally. "High losses guaranteed regardless." Sent Meek. "Meek is correct. It's not..."
Meek? Okay. New person.
"A question of losing ships. It's a question of winning the game."
That's why you guys are just going straight forward. Yeah, no, you gotta win the game, guys. You guys gotta win the game.
Sent Sprout. "Omega, we are with you. What's the plan?" Sprout followed up, and the communications went still. Omega took a steadying breath, smiled, and nodded. Meek, you will take command of battle groups V1, 2, 3, and the 9th, 3rd, and 4th. You are to directly attack the incoming charge, obfuscate our tactic. Make them think we are engaging. Arkanian, you take V4, 5, and 6, and move to flank the charging imps or pursue them, depending on how effective Meek is at stopping them. Your goal will be to distract and hold them while Ally, Sprout, and I crush their range support. Omega transmitted to them through her displays. We can't promise you any more than time, and I'm not even sure how much, but we will do our best, sent Arkanian. This may use up the entire victory fleet.
They say they'll do their best, but they're not the ones who are going to die on the battlefield. You know, it's so funny. It is just so funny. And just sad.
Sent Meek. It's just a simulation, and they aren't grading us based on how many ships we keep. What's our part in this, Omega? Sent Sprout. You will take the entire 7th Fleet, and Ally, you will take the whole 5th. Both of you need to join me as we charge directly through their initial advance, and then, once we are clear, spread out and curve to either side. I will take the entire Circle Armada and everything else we have not committed and adjust our speed in accordance with your envelopment. We will hit their rear support from all sides and destroy them before their forward elements can finish off our holding fleets. Their leader instructed electronically.
You know, this might actually be a good idea because really Admiral Rollah's fleets are outnumbered, but they're not outgunned. That's the one thing right there. They're not outgunned. They are outnumbered, but they're not outgunned. And yes, surrounding Admiral Rollah's fleet this way and taking out the support ships, the ranged ships, and then you're going to be dealing with the far larger vessels later on. It might actually work, but the cost is just so high. It's too great. And let's just say you succeed in defeating Admiral Rollah's fleet. The victory fleet will be nothing, will be shattered after this. I don't know how the Galactic Republic is going to recoup or recover this very painful victory. This bitter, ash in the mouth victory. Because the Battlefleet Zectec still has a large amount of fleets in their possession. Admiral Rollah is just a taste of what's to come. Admiral Rollah and her fleet are just, one piece of the greater whole. So yeah, good luck, Omega.
Though she could sense some reluctance to the tactic from Ally and Meek, they knew well enough not to voice them any further and to trust in Omega. As well they should, for she could see the big picture.
Yeah, the big picture.
She could see the whole board and the costs of their actions. There were none better at these kinds of puzzles than she. And Omega had already sworn to herself that she would win this game, would save her friends and family, and then she would save the Republic as well.
The Republic died a long time ago, Omega. What you're seeing now is just echoes of the past. It's now the Empire, led by the Chancellor, the Supreme Chancellor.
They splashed down into the suddenly advancing ocean of silver and red ships, smashing a few with their mere passage as they engaged with the others. The shoals of small alien craft spun and swirled about her vessels, toothy ships taking tiny bites out of the whales and sharks which comprised her fleet. She gave orders to alter their attack patterns, but somehow the enemy instantly reacted to any movement orders Rollah sent out. That kind of reactive ability could not be trained into flesh and blood alone. It required more, she knew. A connection, psychic, biological, or technological.
Biological and technological, yes.
Some method of coordinating responses and sending out orders near instantaneously. And the dominating intelligence which was playing this battlefield against her was matching and countering the Lord Admiral's subtlest maneuvers like a strategist might easily play through a casual game of regicide. The battlefield had transformed in mere seconds after their arrival, the alien offense going from a desperate bid to buy time to a troublesome tide of star-colored teeth. And then the initial clash was revealed for what it truly was. A farce! They had taken losses and feigned engagement only to speed past her ships, angling for her retreating ranged support. They had bluffed her, and she had fallen directly into their hands. She thought to order a reversal, but even now she could see they would be too slow to correct in time, the arcs of their returns too wide to prevent the battle moving straight into the face of her support units. Still, better to bring her might around and prevent a slaughter than idle with the few ships the Republic had left behind. And then, suddenly, the Lord Admiral watched her options dwindle and shrink as a second force of Republic reserves came about, outflanking her scattered fleet and firing into their sides and back. The forces she had present in the forward advance could crush these insects without significant losses, but only if she dedicated them to the task and left the support to fend for itself in the meantime. Choosing to ignore the current enemy and turn back would almost certainly result in casualties to her forward assault fleet.
Charge forward, Admiral Rollah. The support fleet. The Emperor protects. Charge forward. Charge forward. The support vessels will just have to figure it out themselves. Yeah.
Which contained most of her battleships. The price of dignity shook and trembled around her as two more Mandators fell into pursuit just behind, slamming her Oberon with fire from either side. And the third, which she had been dueling with, was not far behind and hot on their trail. Rollah's technologically assisted mind reeled as she kept track of her losses and projected losses. Her ships were sturdy, durable, they could take a lot of damage before being entirely destroyed. But, as it was, even they would begin to wither, either those of her forward rank or the smaller number which composed her ranged support. To make matters worse, the Republic had come in from behind them as well, falling upon the planet of Axum with what she could only assume were troop ships full of reinforcements they would use to crush flat their garrisons and survivors on the planet. This entire situation was turning into Grok's manure, and over objectives she hardly thought worthy, no less. Had Orion Phaetris himself not insisted upon this plan of action, Rollah would have never given it a single serious consideration. And where is that Space Marine anyway? She growled to herself, angrily tapping into her command chair, fingers clicking as she sent order adjustments out to her right flank.
I thought you were supposed to come here alone, but I guess you were supposed to come here with the Skywatch. Skywatch, right? Skywatch chapter. Yes.
As the Lord Admiral considered her next move. The entire Skywatch escort fleet had launched into the Midterranean at the same time she had. Rollah was used to delays when dealing with warp travel, but if they did not arrive soon, then their arrival would cease to matter entirely. Rollah's head began to pound in her steel skull. As Lord Admiral of the entire sector, such as it was, she had greater priorities than suicidal adherence to the orders of a single chapter master. She had to make her navy stretch. This could not be their last battle. Establish a direct link with the Admiralty, she hissed through clenched teeth, nostrils flaring. It's past time we leave this, she began to say. Lord Admiral, additional contacts, warp signatures are being registered, called
Warp? Oh, I guess they're here now.
The sensors officer. A smile lit the man's cyborg face as he looked up at her to report. They are Astartes! The Adeptus Astartes! The Emperor's angels have arrived! Their ships are approaching at full burn. Arrival inside the combat zone is estimated at 7 minutes. He exclaimed in clear elation. It's about time the Skywatch got here, she said with a heavy sigh, nearly slumping into her chair. Negative, ma'am. It's not the Skywatch. In fact, there are too many ships appearing to represent a single Astartes escort fleet. This looks more like... The sensor's operator began to correct, before the lights on the bridge flickered and died. They then quickly restarted, everything now lit in clear emerald green.
Do you have reinforcements or not?
A large, previously inert hololithic projector thunked into life, and then flickered out its own grainy image, which gradually came into greater focus as it appeared before them. It had the likeness of a large, ornate sarcophagus, massive in size as it was displayed across the deck. A skeletal visage was carved ornately across the breadth of its green, light-forged surface. The skull which crowned it being lit from within, its eyes all too alive, despite the being's current resting place.
New spherical critical tactical link established,
said a deep, thrumming voice from the howlers mounted onto the walls.
Greetings, Lord Admiral Rollah. I am Sebastian Vondrell.
Hold on. Let me get your name. Sebastian Vondrell. Vondrell? Okay.
Arch-imbalancer of the Tempered Hands. We have...
Imbalancer of the Tempered Hands. Okay. What rank is Imbalancer though? Okay.
Arrived to bring death in the Emperor's name, and we have not come alone.
And you're in some sort of box? Okay. Are you like a dreadnought that's been entombed onto the ship somehow?
Said the chapter master of the steel-blooded Space Marines.
Chapter master of the Tempered Hands. Okay. Sebastian Vondrell.
Rollah stood right away, a hand laying over her heart as she looked up at the massive image. I greet you, Arch-Imbalancer. Your aid is sorely needed, and we have little time to waste. May I inquire as to whom you have brought with you? Asked the Lord Admiral, her burden visibly lightening as she spoke. In response, another 2 holograms were lit into the space, standing smaller and to either side of the enormous projected coffin, one much larger than the other. The smaller of the 2 new arrivals bowed deeply, sweeping off a wide-brimmed hat and smiling with the deft charm of a rogue. I am Lord Tiberius Clouseau.
Okay. Lord Tiberius Clouseau. How do I spell that? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Of the Imperial Coalition of Sanctioned Tradesmen and Pathfinders.
Imperial Coalition of Sanctioned Trade Masters and Pathfinders. Okay. That's a long title. It's a long name. Imperial Coalition of Sanctioned Trade Masters and Pathfinders. Wow.
We and our 500 ships are here to do as the Emperor bids. According to your dictates, of course, Lord Admiral Rollah.
500 ships. Nice. I wonder how big these vessels are, really.
Said the flamboyant trader, resting one hand on a heavy golden belt buckle while the other lingered lightly on the handle of a thin saber at his side. Oh, and am I to expect a fee for this aid? Lord Rollah asked, raising an eyebrow at the leader of the, thus far, troublesome impromptu guild which this man had managed to organize in the chaos of their long jump into this galaxy.
Exactly what do you pay, to this mercenary group, to the trade masters and pathfinders of the coalition that has been sanctioned by the Imperium? How do you pay them? With what? There is no economy here. Unless, of course, maybe Battlefleet ZegTech have created some sort of economy. But I just don't see how you're going to pay them.
You wound me, Admiral. Of course I am charging you nothing for this aid. I'd never even think of it, he said with a wave of his hand and a mocker's grin. After all, someone else has already paid for this little excursion in full. It
must have been Orion.
Would be disingenuous for me to charge you twice. But if you feel so inclined, Lord Admiral, I would not stop you from donating to the cause. He added, his smile slinking wider. Rollah sighed and turned to the other, who seemed to be waiting, studying their interaction like a spider might study a pair of new insects trapped in its web. Once she faced him, he bowed with an odd elegance, his many arms sweeping out, forming gestures and signs with every stilted yet smooth clockwork-like movement. He had 6 arms, all of them flesh, all of them protruding from 2 long sleeves.
6 arms and all of them flesh?
One on either side of his thick red robes. His garments obscured everything about the rest of his body, save for the collection of lenses and sensor orifices that formed the shape of his insect-like face, which was visible protruding from the tightly packed hood of the priest's vestments.
Peace be between your soul and form, honored Admiral of Sector Designation ZegTech. I am the Arch-Mechanici of the Forge Worlds have...
You guys talk at the speed of light. But then when you want to talk to us, regular human beings, you're going to talk like this. Come on now. Come on now. What the hell is this? I'm so impatient, guys. I'm sorry. This guy is just... he's frustrating. Just talk faster.
Come to shape long from this disorder. Blessings be upon our holy machines who bear us fearlessly.
C-3PO is better than you. R2-D2 is better than you. I can tolerate his people, but this, no, man, no, please.
Into the maw of the Omnissiah's glorious war.
He droned in high binaural.
Arch-Mechanici, okay.
Rollah smiled politely and interlocked her knuckles and fingers like the spokes of a gear, smoothly returning the high greeting to the master of machines, being more than well acquainted with the cult. In her time, Rollah had made many dealings with them and would not even hold her current position were it not for her relationship with the Forge Masters and Magos masses of the sector. Indeed, the gesture revealed that she was as close as any non-believer could come to the cult and not be destroyed for what they knew. I am honored to receive the aid of the Machine God's faithful. You are most welcome on this battlefield, Arch-Magos Lesat Gamma, she said with a...
Oh, you have the easiest name. Lasset Gamma. That's it. That's it. Everybody else, Lord Tiberius Clauser. And then Sebastian von Dra. Oh my gosh. At least Lasset Gamma. I'm done. Yeah, your name is far better. But please, improve your speed. You know, it has to be a bit faster than this, or I'm gonna fall asleep.
Bow of her head, though she pointedly did not bend her back. The Mechanicus were rarely susceptible to flattery, at least not when it came in the form of a breach of protocol. The Magos seemed as well pleased as an inscrutable cyborg could be, returning the gesture with a nod of his own, clicking as he did. If I may be so bold, what has brought the church here? It is rare that you venture directly into imperial conflicts, she said after a moment's thought. The private armies and navies of the Adeptus Mechanicus were among, if not the most technologically advanced forces fielded by the whole of mankind.
You know, we're all in this together, Admiral Rollah. I think maybe that's what he's going to tell you. We're all in this together. We're all alone in this galaxy, and we need to back each other up. We can't just be there when it suits our needs. We need to be there every time. Whenever one of us is in trouble, we all come up to, you know, back up, team up to fight against our enemies. I think maybe that's what he's going to say.
From legions of fanatical, highly advanced cyborg soldiers to fleets of bloated, almost alien battleships easily as opulent as anything the Ecclesiarch may purchase, and twice as heavily laden with ancient weapons and new, obscene devices. It was always a blessing when the Church of the Machine God deigned to join their Imperial brothers and sisters on the battlefield, until it came time for them to claim payment for their aid. And unlike the greedy guild of rogue traders, it was rare that the Mechanicus was ever satisfied with the mundanity of currency.
Chapter Master Orion Phaedrus has negotiated our intervention into this conflict. In accordance with our agreement, we, the faithful of the Omnissiah, will hold the enemy armada in place for 1 hour.
The mostly machine creature.
So, I guess I was wrong. We're not in this together. We are not teaming up for the sake of all of us surviving. No, there's payment. That's a bit sad, but okay. Yeah.
Elucidated. Rollah blinked in surprise, but before she could truly respond, Lord Clouseau coughed and interjected. Yes, since it does seem rather relevant, I should add that our dealings with the good chapter master are very much the same. 1 hour from the moment of our engagement with the enemy. After that, we are free to do as we wish, and to be frank with you, dear Lord Admiral, I and most of my fleet have no desire to continue a battle of attrition with these endless silver arrowheads. The rogue trader clarified. And I assume this is the same with you, Archimbalancer? She asked the enormous green coffin.
It is,
Was the simple reply. She nodded tightly. Then, can I assume that...
So, there's a limit to this alliance. 1 hour. Wow. Imperium of Man forces, wow. Wow. I'm kind of disappointed in all of you.
that for the duration of that time, I am in command of our joint forces? She asked.
it is so.
Rumbled the entombed space marine. But of course, said the rogue trader.
The Omnissiah wills it.
Chanted the machine priest. Good, then heed my orders. Arch Imbalancer, I will need you to take your fleet and contest the skies above Axum. We only have a limited amount of time to evacuate our forces from the planet, and to accomplish that, we will need to clear enough airspace to move transports and drop craft through en masse. Contest them viciously, Chapter Master. We are on a time limit, and they are not, she said.
By the Emperor and the martyred father, it will be done,
said the second oldest ranking space marine among the loyalists who had come with the fleet. Lord...
So we're not here to... Or should I say, the Imperium of Man is not here to defend their occupation of Axum, but they are leaving. They're going to be retreating from the Basilica. They're going to be taking who's ever left on the planet and get out. Okay.
Clouseau, divide your ships between two categories as best as you can manage. Those which are geared towards combat, and those which are geared towards hauling cargo. The former will rush to the enemy which is behind us and engage. Stop them from destroying our support while we mop up the ones we are dealing with now. The latter will go with the Arch Imbalancer and aid in the evacuation, the Lord Admiral said, turning to face the flamboyant green hologram once more. He smiled and bowed again, though much more formally this time. Your wish is my command, he intoned with a wink. Archmagos, I require your fleet and forces to do two things. Firstly, begin engaging at range with the enemy armada. Do as little damage as possible to our own ships. Avoid crossfire at all costs, but do not close with them. Pick them off at range as much as is possible. I do not want to risk any serious damage to the Arks. You must act as my ranged fire support until the rogue traders can fight off the enemy attack, or until we can arrive to decide it. The Arc Mechanicus vessels are our only means of production and resupply in this galaxy. We cannot place them at great risk.
Orion, why did you bring these guys here? No. No. Take those ships back. Take those ships back. Take those ships back. I cannot believe they brought such important infrastructure onto the battlefield. I thought you were just an Archmagos who just brought battleships, not factories. No. You guys cannot be here. You cannot be here.
The enemy seem to be closing with dangerous numbers upon your location. You are to retreat into the Immaterium. Hour expended or not, she ordered the six-armed priest of the machine god.
Thank you, Admiral Rollah. Hey.
We had already anticipated a 98.575% chance that this would be requested of us. We are therefore amply prepared to engage the enemy as described. What is your second order, daughter of the flesh?
Clicked and buzzed the Archmagos. They are using some kind of connection between their ships to instantly relay orders and commands.
The Oracle team.
I want you to use the Noosphere to breach and infiltrate the system as much as you can. Learn everything it lets you, and then take down as much of it as is possible by whatever means are available. We can greatly extend our longevity and effectiveness in this battle if we can at least impair this system they are using against us. Do you think this is possible? The Lord Admiral asked.
It will be made possible,
was the mechanical reply she received. Lord Admiral Rollah smiled. Good. Then let us repay their cunning and trickery with ferocity and faith. I plan to use the entirety of the hour we have. Make ready to do the same.
Hey guys, how can you guys bring such important and valuable infrastructure onto the battlefield like this? Those arcs should not be here then. If they are the main manufacturing and support and supply vessels of Battlefleet Zectec. Maybe they should not be here on the battlefield. They should not be here. They're just too important. Until you guys actually have a planet where you have settled and you're able to build up industry and have shipyards and have all these other forms of infrastructure, until then, maybe these arcs should not be here on the battlefield. They should always be with Battlefleet Zectec, maintaining, producing resources, or should I say fleet resources for that fleet, and not here on the battlefield. As big and as imposing as they may be and powerful with weapons, they should not be here. That's what I think.
Finally, they had breached the walls, shattering and melting a hole into the interior of that towering impediment upon their assault. Using a combination of looted Imperial weapons and artifact armaments such as Kombirr's rifle, the rebels had focused fire on a single portion of the defensive structure. The walls had been erected in general haste and then reinforced, and against the many odd weapons that were brought against it, it only lasted a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that was very surprising for me. That's very, very surprising.
But they were the bloodiest minutes of Kombirr's entire life. The Axumite had watched from behind his helmet as the men and aliens around him were mulched by turret fire, or seared and struck down by the scattering rain of varied munitions that the soldiers atop and within fired down at them.
Wait a minute, isn't Kombirr supposed to be with the love of his life? Isn't he supposed to be with the love of his life, Javona? What is he doing on the battlefield? You guys are supposed to be making babies, if I'm not mistaken.
For a few moments, the assault had seemed hopeless. Before, finally, the stone-like shell of the wall took one blast too many and crumpled inwards, exposing a passageway inside. Kombirr raised his voice in a primal battle cry as he and a horde of fellow, frenzied civilians charged into the breach, their wordless shout every bit the match of those roared back at them by the Imperial defenders who waited within. As the first mob of aliens and Axumites burst inside, the interior of the wall passageway was suddenly lit by a flood of flashing, glowing lasgun shots, muzzle fire from auto guns, and much worse. The volleys slammed into the intruders from nearly all sides, scything the dissidents down in swathes. The losses they took were staggering, and Kombirr found himself being pitched and thrown by the force of the Imperial weapons, body covered in burns and bruises, and yet still alive nonetheless, even as he was borne down to the ground. Most of those around him were not so well protected, and did not survive their charge into the mouth of the breach.
I'm sure those were Gene Stealer cult members.
The imps within having been well prepared with ranks of shock troops and heavy weapons. Even with Kombirr's protection, he was only moments from being torn to pieces or burnt into charred meat by the grinding, focused fire of the enemy lines. But he was saved once again as a spinning, dodging form ducked over and around the rending streams of fire. Bathrazan never ceased to amaze Kombirr, moving so smoothly and swiftly that it gave him chills just to watch. Despite holding only melee weapons, 2 lightsabers to be exact, he was easily a more lethal weapon than Kombirr's own rare rifle. The man spun between luminous lines of laser fire and superheated bullets, shrugging off 2 or 3 shots that actually struck him, before plunging into the enemy soldiers like a drill. Arms, legs, and heads of Imperial foes went flying, entrails and organs flung to either side of him as he tore through them with his own alien claws, as well as with the hungry, twin humming blades of his lightsabers. Kombirr staggered, but found hands all around him, helping him stand, pulling him to his feet, supported by the men and women who surrounded him. He felt a fervor, a need for battle and for revenge, but he was struggling to keep up with the obvious frenzy and odd coordination of those who were leading the charge.
Yeah, because they are Gene Stealer cult members, but okay.
It was not every, or even most, of the rebels which exhibited this fatalistic need to push ahead, to grind the Imperials into gory paste beneath them. But it was enough for the mood to become an infectious cascade of violence which drove on and encouraged those others who were there to witness it. They struck him as an army of the possessed, but not in a bad way. They were fearless, laying down their lives so that the oppression of the Imperium could be ended. And seeing the unreasoning hatred pushing them forward into near certain death only made Kombirr try harder. He pushed into a hallway as part of the mob which surrounded him, guns waving, voices crying out for blood. Bathrazan had cleared a space for them, and then cut his way out to the right, the enemy running before his blades. Many followed him, but not Kombirr. He, and nearly half the group which had followed the champion into the wall interior, turned instead to the left, and just in time to run face first into Imperial reinforcements. As the riot around him screamed ahead, Kombirr kicked and elbowed some space for himself and kneeled down, the long barrel of his weapon extending out as he gazed intently through the scope. Through it, he saw the charging rebels running face first into a trio of enormous armored men. Their heads were covered, save for one who bore his ugly, exaggerated face in a brutish scowl. They bore massive, thick shields and clubs as their weapons, the former appearing to effortlessly absorb the volleys of fire that came their way before they turned the shields to the side and began smashing with the latter, literally pulping entire men flat with single swings of the simple weapons.
Damn.
Space Marines! Kombirr growled, half
Space Marines with clubs? I don't think so. No, I don't think they're Space Marines.
in fear, half in sudden excitement and anticipation.
And besides, if it was Space Marines, you would not even see them. They'd be so fast, and you'd hear loud cracking noises from the bolter guns. Nah, it's not them.
Despite their formidable reputations, these big brutish angels of the Emperor did not seem to be caring too much for anything beyond hammering mindlessly away at the rebels.
Nah, man, they're not. Kombirr. Oh, bro, your ignorance is very, very cute. The ignorance is very cute on this matter. Really, I find it so cute.
The mind-addled genetic experiments of the Imperium kept up their thoughtless, tactless attack, thinking too much of killing and not enough of using their shields to hide from the additional incoming fire they were receiving, like what Kombirr sent their way a moment later. His gun barked loudly, a spiraling disruptor spike suddenly discharging from its barrel and hurtling into the exposed collarbone of one of the club-bearing giants. His entire chest collapsed, throwing the man-thing back off its feet and creating a gap in the barrier it had been forming with the two others of its kind.
It's the ogres, okay. But I can see how they could confuse ogres and Space Marines. I mean, ogres are quite big themselves, muscled as well. They're carrying not really advanced weaponry, but devastating weaponry, especially if you're close enough to them to fight in a melee, like close quarter combat. Yeah, very devastating. But they are not Space Marines. No.
It had barely landed flat on its back before the hole in its chest began to widen, disintegrating most of its neck and torso before the effect halted. Kombirr lowered his gun and punched his fist. "Death to the Emperor!" he yelled.
Heresy. Heresy of the highest order. I don't know who, but someone has to silence this child. How dare you say that?
Aliens and humans around him roaring with him. "Death to the Emperor! Death to the Emperor!" They echoed, swarming around the two other monsters of the Empire and pulling them down, destroying them under the weight of their numbers. But their numbers were starting to thin. Something Kombirr could not help but notice as those ahead of him continued forward and less from behind him were able to follow. Getting this far had proven to be a bloody grind, an achievement born on unthinkable amounts of sacrifice. But they were not about to back down, not now that they had made it this far. He looked down to check his ammunition count. 3 shots remained. He grimaced, but only clutched his weapon more tightly. As far as he was concerned, this only meant that he had to make these last few shots count. With that thought in mind, the Axumite heir pressed ahead, following after those who had come before him and turning a bend. There, he could exit out of the wall, the natural one, the one that led into the rest of the Imperial base. But it was not unbarred. Standing within the entranceway, already engaged in battle with the rebels who had come with him, were 5 figures, dancing and cavorting despite their bulky armored bodies. The screaming fanatics of the Emperor, dressed in their powered armor and hefting sparking mauls and swords.
Sisters of battle.
He kneeled again and began to take aim before he was suddenly sighted by one of the Imperial sisters. She barked an insult in their Gothic language at him and—
Sister, she said death to the Emperor. Not she, he. Yeah, Kombirr. He said death to the Emperor. You know what we do to traitors. You know what we do to heretics.
snapped out her free hand, a hand which he realized was not free, but holding a pistol of some kind. The smaller weapon roared with the force of something far greater than its size implied, making Kombirr jerk and then throw himself across the floor, barely evading the 3 shots she snapped off at him.
Kombirr, just one of those bullets hitting you, just one, half your body will be blown off.
His heart beat in his ears as he scrabbled for the cover created by a heaped pile of stinking bodies, breathing hard all the while. He turned to peek out, only to feel his blood run cold from what he saw. The last 9 rebels were being hacked apart before his eyes, and once they lay dying upon the gore-slicked ground, the glowing owl eyes of the sisters turned upon him. He cried out, ducking and covering his head with both hands as they riddled the pile of bodies he was hiding behind with explosive bullets, blowing most of the obstructing flesh away and knocking him painfully forward. 2 gaping rents were left in the back of his armor, the wounds there bruised and bleeding badly, though he only barely felt their pain, at least for now. Gasping and out of breath, his lungs flattened by the impacts, Kombirr crawled forward and rolled onto his back, aiming his gun up and firing it blindly, his 3rd shot sailing over their heads. The sisters did not even blink or flinch, raising their horrific hand cannons and shooting a volley directly into the prone, dazed rebel.
Goodbye, Kombirr. Goodbye.
Kombirr flinched before the impacts reached his body, but found nothing struck him, and when he opened his eyes, he saw why, though remained confused by it nonetheless. The bolts they had fired were hovering in the air between he and they, held back by some invisible force, even as they burned and spun in place, their
What the hell's going on here? A psyker?
micro-rockets firing hot and hard, but getting nowhere. The answer to his confusion came a moment
Of course, your wife is here.
later, Javona revealing herself as she strode past him, eyes luminous with power as she held the attack back, and then reflected the explosions which followed.
Monstrum!
Spat one of the Imperials.
Xenos!
Barked another as they all raised their various close-ranged combat weapons and began to charge.
Idiatura fashion mea!
Javona bellowed back, her voice deep and resonating with unnatural power. She punctuated the words by swinging her arms widely and clapping her hands loudly before herself. The clap created more than sound, however, the gesture unleashing a rolling wave of telekinetic might. This blast met with and overcame the charge of the 5 sisters, tossing the remaining shots they fired as they ran into different directions, none of them near her or Kombirr.
That's cool, but no, Javona. I need you to die. What you're doing here is cool, really. I wish I had that type of power, but no. No. I'm not going to entertain you.
The Imperial fanatics howled in fury, fear, and pain as they were caught in the hurricane of power she had expelled in their direction. Their armored bodies were thrown back, flung into the ceiling, the floor, and each other before finally being ejected from the passageway. Their impacts around and against the exit provided sufficient force to dislodge the entire entrance wall, blowing it away with them and leaving the exitway a gaping hole within the interior-facing side of the Imperial wall. Givona smiled at the effect, clearly delighting in her power, before sagging and resting her hands on her knees. She was still smiling, however, until she turned and spotted Kombirr, who was obviously wounded. Givona ran over to her chosen companion, taking his hand while coming down to her knees.
Yeah, chosen companion.
Kneeling beside him. Her eyes were full of concern, genuine and frantic, and it warmed him to see it, making him grateful for the helmet which covered the boyish blush on his face. "I'm alright, just took some bad hits, but the armor ate most of it," he said to her. "You should not be doing this," she said with no small amount of urgency. "You have fought enough. You can leave this to—" she began to say, cut off as a shadow passed over them and spoke the words for her.
Me,
said Bathrazan. He and several more rebels striding past the kneeling two, all obviously eager for battle, and yet seeming fresher and less worn down than Kombirr would have thought. The big alien man eyed them carefully before moving on, and Givona smiled sardonically but nodded as he left. "Exactly," she said, looking back down at Kombirr. The Axumite grinned back up at her, and then groaned as he began to sit. "Be careful. That armor does not make you invulnerable," she scolded, sliding under his arm to help take some of his weight. He grimaced and winced, feeling the beating he had taken, small pieces of metal embedded deep into the 2 bleeding wounds he now bore. "Don't I know it? I don't suppose you have any Bacta on you? Any breathers?" he asked, but she bit her lip and shook her head. But no sooner had she answered than a Bacta rebreather was dropped right into Kombirr's lap, another shadow falling over the two as several more rebels rushed past them. "Down with the Empire!" yelled one. "Death to the Emperor!" screamed another. But not the one who cast the new shadow. This one pausing beside them, drawing out a smelly stick of wrapped weeds, and placing it between 2 lips as a lighter flicked open, and
Yes, Samuel. Welcome back. Welcome to the battlefield. What do you want?
flame lit the end. Kombirr looked up and felt his eyes grow wide, a smile spreading over his features as recognition hit him. "Samael, it's you!" Kombirr said, yanking his own helmet off to reveal a sweaty but relieved face. Givona twisted around, eyes narrowing right away. But the sight of Kombirr's relief and the medicine he had received were assurance enough to keep her from being too alarmed. But the man had an aura on him, a menace she felt was familiar yet unrecognized.
I'm sure Samuel is also, containing himself, resisting the urge to kill this Xeno. Because I'm sure he knows that she is not of this galaxy, she's of my galaxy. she is a Jinstiller cult member. I'm sure Samuel understands and notices and recognizes what she is. But, for the sake of keeping with character, he has to resist the urge to kill her where she is right now. Yeah.
He was almost as large as Bathrazan, thick muscles pushing against his green work clothes and the long dark coat he wore over them. He stood like Bathrazan as well, slightly up on the balls of his feet, his hands free of obvious weapons and yet thick with the scent of blood, something Givona could sense more than actually smell. The newcomer did not respond right away to Kombirr's words, taking a long drag on his low stick and then breathing it out slowly. When he was done, He opened his eyes, the center of each one akin to twin round flakes of obsidian glass, glistening intensely but black as pitch. "Hey again, kid," said the looming man, lowering his large, scarred hands, sliding them into the deep pockets of his black jacket. His eyes found Javona's in place of Kombirr's, glinting, smoldering darkly, his lips quirking ever so slightly, before his sight slid up to Kombirr's beaming face, the subtleties of his former expression bleaching away, replaced with the barest hint of melancholy. He stood silent for a moment longer than was comfortable, holding the low stick between his teeth, the white smoke snaking out from its tip drifting into the air and sliding between them, slightly obscuring his gaze. "I wasn't sure you'd even know how to get here. It's good to see you again," Kombirr stuttered out awkwardly. Samael drew hard on his low stick again, the end lighting bright orange and traveling an impressive distance up its length before it stopped. He puffed out a cloud of smoke and spat what remained of the weed onto the ground and stomped on it once. "I was always gonna follow this to its heart, kid. But if I'm honest, I was hoping not to see you here again. But you know what they say," he said, black, almost doll-like eyes shimmering oddly as he sighed and shook his head. "Hope is the first step on the road to disappointment."
I think Samuel likes Kombirr, you know? In his heart of steel, there is a little bit of a chink there. And that chink is Kombirr. He's somewhere nestled in his heart. Poor man. He has a job to do. He has a job to do, but he cares so much for this boy. Ow. Alright, guys, that is it with Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, episode 40, Mortal Pinnacle, part 4, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. New characters, Arkanian of the Oracle team, Sprout, Ally, and Mech. They're helping out Omega and the Victory Fleet, and, well, they had a very desperate, ugly victory plan that they were going to execute against Admiral Rollah and her fleet. It would have costed them a tremendous amount of vessels, personnel, but they might have gotten that victory. It would have been a very bitter victory. And Admiral Rollah, on her side of things, she was becoming extremely desperate, to the point where she even considered about retreating from Axum, because her forces were severely outnumbered. Her support vessels were being attacked. She'd been outflanked, and to the point where it became a very serious problem for her fleet. Yes, they had the guns, yes, they had the tonnage behind them, but they were simply outnumbered. And these little mosquitoes were eventually going to take out, even her most powerful battleships. So she was on the verge of, exiting out of the system, until Sebastian Vondel, the chapter master of the Tempered Hands, Lord Tiberius of the Coalition of Sanctioned Trade Masters and Pathfinders, as well as Archimagos Lasset Gamma, finally arrived with their vessels, and it is a very big backup that has come to help Admiral Rollah. I think the Pathfinders have got at least 500 vessels, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's a lot of vessels that have come out from the warp and here to assist Admiral Rollah and her fleet. But they're only going to be here for 1 hour, which is really not good, I would say. I think you'd need more than an hour to, make sure that everybody on the planet can evacuate, and that the fleet can hold off the Galactic Republic's Victory Fleet long enough until everybody is off the planet. So yeah, it's kind of sad that the Imperium of Man forces are not really united in a way that says that we are here together, we're in this together, no matter what. There is no payment, there is no service rendered. This is all for the God Emperor of mankind. This is all for mankind. This is all for the Imperium of Man. And, there is no monetary interest or any other form of payment interest in this endeavor. We are here because we are part of the Imperium of Man. I hoped that that's what it was going to be like, but no. that's not what it's about here. That's not what it's about. It's about business and negotiation. And the chapter master of the Skywatch, Orion, has made those negotiations. He's made those business deals, and that's why these three fleets have arrived to help Admiral Rollah. I did say that the Archimagos Lasset Gamma and his fleet, especially those of the Ark vessels, should not be here. Those vessels that are able to produce many of the resources and technology and equipment, and I think also shipbuilding, if I'm not mistaken, that the Imperium of Man requires, especially for Battlefleet Zectec. I think those vessels should not be here. Those are very important vessels that need to be kept away from the battlefields as much as possible, and only when this new Imperium of Man have a capital planet of their own, and they're able to create industry and factories and foundries, then you can think about using these vessels on the battlefield. Until then, they should not be here. They're just too important. And then we also had Kombirr fighting at the Basilica, and his girlfriend Javona also here helping him. And yeah, I'm still waiting for this lady to die. I have nothing personal against you. Ravonna. You know, it's not like I hate you because of your attitude or anything. No, it's just what you are. You're a Xeno race belonging to a very powerful, very dangerous, Xeno organism. You know, you belong to the Tyranids. There can be no negotiation with you. There can be no form of life with you. No, you need to go. You and the rest of the Genestealer cult have to go. You and Bothrazan have to go. You have to go. But yeah, Kombirr, he's lucky. Ravonna saved his life from the sisters who were about to kill him with their bolter guns. And of course, Samuel is here watching over Kombirr and also the proceedings of the battle. But it seems to me that the rebels are being led into a trap by Samuel and by the forces within the Basilica. That's what I suspect, because Samuel is just too calm about all of this that's happening. You know, as he sees these rebels and the Genestealer cult bash through into the Basilica walls and just head deeper and deeper into the facility. I think there is some sort of trap that Samuel has, communicated with the Saint Lazarus, and somehow, some way, these fighters and combatants are going to be in some sort of trap, and then they'll be killed in one fell swoop. That's what I think. Samuel looks like the guy who would actually do something like that. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And yeah, Samuel is a bit sad that Kombirr is on the battlefield. I don't think he wants him to die. I think he does care for him a bit. And, he just doesn't want to see this boy, caught up in all of this and then die a very painful and horrible death. Because, if he surrenders to the Imperium of Man, either they kill him, which is a mercy, or they turn him into a servitor. And that is just a nightmare that I do not wish on anybody. I do not wish on anybody. I cannot imagine Kombirr becoming a servitor. So I'd rather have him die on the battlefield. Quick, fast. Even if it's painful for those few seconds. At least you're dead. And you won't become those zombies. Those abominations. Yeah. Okay, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens in future episodes. Sorry guys that I'm taking so long to react to Star Wars versus Warhammer. I'm always having issues to deal with. I'm always having videos to react to, and yes, there will be times when I'm not reacting to particular videos on set dates, because this was supposed to be on Thursday, but it's Monday now. And I'm sorry about that. I'm really, really sorry about that. But as I've stated before, I've not given up on Star Wars versus Warhammer. I love this series. Just give me time, give me patience, so that I can reach up to reacting to a particular episode of Star Wars versus Warhammer, and you will see it. It might not be on the day that it's supposed to be playing, but you will see it. Yeah, that I can assure you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here with Star Wars versus Warhammer 40K, made by AFanWithTooMuchTime. Yes, that is it. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys hopefully on Thursday. If it's not Thursday, you'll see me on Friday. If it's not Friday, you'll see me on Saturday or Sunday. You will see me. Okay, I'm not going anywhere. Okay, bye-bye.